to our meeting. I think we've got everybody
So
who's
I'm reading
on
off a
and ready
different
to go.
Yeah, I'm going to read off a different screen here. So in accordance with
Yep,
the governor's
fine.
order superseding certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 330A, Section 20, relating to the 2020 novel coronavirus outbreak emergency, the May 30th, 2023 Board of Health meeting at 7 p.m. public meeting shall be physically closed to the public and to avoid group congregation. Alternative access to this meeting shall be utilizing the Zoom virtual meeting software. This application shall allow users to view the meeting and send a comment or question to the chair via the chat function. Submitted text comments, questions may be read into the record at the appropriate points of the meeting if they are in line with the town's public comment policy. The meeting will be recorded for future broadcast by Norfolk Community Television.
Awesome, thank you.
And I guess looking at the first public hearing, you want to start there, or do you want to do reorganization?
Yeah, well, yeah, we can do that. I just wanted to introduce, we have a new board member, Christy Burns. Welcome.
Thanks.
Hi.
Maybe you can just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I've lived in Norfolk for 10 years or so. My background is all in events and hospitality. So probably as far as the Board of Health goes, I'm, more familiar with things from, having been ServSafe certified in the past, and, just really familiar with food handling and that sort of piece of things, not so much the septic systems, not as familiar with that, but yeah, that's about it.
You'll learn.
Right, and that'll come in handy for our next conversation.
Okay, so let's move on with the public hearing then?
Yeah, yep, we'll start.
So at 7 p.m. approximately, 7:03, the Grange Community Supper with Jill Kennedy, her appeal of the variance voted by the Board of Health on March 29th, 2023 from the state federal food code. And to summarize, this was a variance to allow the food handler training in lieu of the required certified food protection manager for no longer than 6 months to allow time to secure funding and a member of the Grange Community Supper to obtain the food protection manager certificate. And Jill, I guess the Board of Health did get your letter, and I don't know if you want to read that into the record. It's your choice, or Betsy, if that's the screen you want to share with anyone, or if you just want to, I guess, go through. I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, my experience in my professional work, when we file appeals to a regulatory decision, there usually has to be some sort of, I guess, logical discussion how you feel the board may have erred looking at the regulations that are applicable to the situation. I know John probably gives you a lot more information than you probably need, but he's doing that for your benefit. So I guess the question is, if you could explain, why you feel the board may have erred on requiring what we did, that probably would be the most helpful for the board, as well as to understand where we should concentrate our decision and to reevaluate our decision back in March. So I will turn the floor over to you.
Okay, well, thank you for having me back. And I'm going to waive reading the letter because it's lengthy, a lot of detail in there. The bottom line is, our contention from day one in my whole conversation with John Robertson has been around the fact that we do not believe we're a food establishment. We are not preparing food. It is being prepared according to code under, food certified food managers. It was based on my discussions with John that I got the food handler certification, because he verbally agreed with me that that was a reasonable alternative, because we do not prepare food. The food is prepared off-site. It's put into a a catering tray. It's sealed, it's marked with the date and food temperature. It's then transported by the establishments that prepares the food in a suitable catering transport vessel. It's brought into the Grange, where we literally take it from their container, still sealed, and put it into a heated chafing dish, stick a thermometer in it to verify the temperature, and then serve the food. There is no handling done on our part other than serving the food. So that's the argument, that we do not feel we should be held to the food establishment guidelines. And as I said in my detailed letter, you know, I had a lot of conversation with John around this. I know that he's doing his job. I appreciate all of the guidance that he has given us on proper food handling and safety and all of that. I feel like we've adhered to all of the advice that he has given us. We welcomed, he came in, he did a food inspection of our operation. I attached a copy of that February 16th food inspection to my letter, and you'll see that there's no violation listed on there. He was very, very favorable in everything that he observed that night. I appreciate the fact that there should be allergy awareness. I went out and got that training. We do have, you know, choke certified person on staff. So I think my letter is just pretty self-supporting. We do not feel that we are a food establishment. And that is the reason I originally requested the variance on John's suggestion. I did not request a temporary variance, yet that's what came out of it. So that's my reason.
Okay. Jill, I've read the regulations. I'm going to say very briefly, meaning I've read them once. I haven't read them more than once. And I know John is on the line too. And I think I understand there's a one sentence that's kind of the catch-all to the regulations. And I understand why the regulations do what they do and what they try to cover. And I think that's probably where John is relying on that one last statement on the various types of establishments that do serve food while they're not preparing food. I think the difference is serving food. And I think that's your point too, that you feel it's because you're serving food, you're not preparing food there. And I think that John's interpretation, and I'm going to have him, if he can explain that a little more detail, I think he probably knows exactly what I'm talking about. That's where the crux of, I think, the decision is. And I guess when you look at the long-term impacts of someone getting sick, possibly something happens. All I'm gonna say is that, if everything is covered, it's always to be a little more, I guess, a little bit more conservative on that side. Well, maybe a few more steps for people that are involved. And I understand your concerns completely, but I think where we're kind of running into this interpretation issue is that one statement, or one part of the regulations that I think John will hopefully give me a little more clarity on, which I'm going to turn over to John so he can hopefully explain that one sentence that's a catch-all, as I call it.
Yeah, so I believe you're talking about where the code says that food establishment or the person in charge of the food establishment shall make sure that there is a person in charge and that they are a certified food protection manager. And I think that's what you're referring to. And I believe me, I tried finding in the definitions if food establishment differs from the food preparation, and understanding how regulations are put together, they're not necessarily the clearest. And sure. In the case of the regulations, they clearly were not meant to be interchangeable, but I think the way the regulations are written is, unfortunately, we're kind of stuck in a hard place where they're sort of interchangeable. And I don't want to, I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, but yeah, these are not very clear regulations, and I'll be the first to admit, and I do read a lot of regulations. If I could, I can add on that. I don't have the code in front of me to say word for word, but a food establishment is someone who prepares, it includes people who prepare and serve food.
So that's also where that came from. So while food is being prepared in a permitted establishment, another permitted establishment, the community supper group is receiving the food, taking responsibility for that food, and then turning around and serving it to the guests that come to their event. And that's why I feel that they fit the definition of a food establishment.
So I'll just respond to that by saying, you know, there is area for interpretation, and clearly you're the inspector and I'm not. But in light of the fact that if the Board of Health is not receptive to reversing the decision for that appeal, I guess we're prepared to withdraw our application as a food establishment and choose to proceed as a potluck event under the acts of relative to potluck events from 2014. I believe that we meet all of the conditions to be considered for a potluck event. And that's the alternate route that we will take.
Christy, you had a question? Go ahead.
I just have a question of is this food service manager person, are they required to be on site for all events? I just think for a volunteer group, that would be really challenging to have one person take that responsibility. And I'm assuming liability is where this is all coming from. And I just imagine that would be very challenging for one individual on their own to take that on for every single one of these dinners.
Well, Christy, I mean, to give you an idea, I mean, John isn't singling, and the Board of Health isn't singling the suppers out by any means. If you saw on the Facebook page, there was someone that was working with the King Philip programs to try and get someone trained and certified. And my understanding that's been done already. So,
oh, sure. No, I'm just asking the question of, does this person need to be on site for every single dinner for the duration of each dinner?
Again, John, my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, my understanding is they don't need to be there, but they need to be contactable if something does come up. So that's I think that's it's not the perfect situation, but they don't need to be there. The convenience of having someone who will be there, whether they're organizing it and having the certification, is probably the best of both worlds. And I completely see Jill's point. At the same time, she has a workaround for this, and I completely understand that too. So this is something that the board as a whole we can discuss, or we'll let Jill make the final decision on how if she wants to stick with this or proceed the route of the potluck. So that's kind of I think the direction we're probably going with this.
Do you want me to answer about the person on site?
Sure.
So they do not have to be on site. They are responsible to make sure that someone is on site who is aware of food safety requirements and safe handling. And I use the word handling because that's what's in the code, although I think we've used that in this discussion to talk about food prep versus food serving. But essentially, when you're serving food, you're handling food as well. But the certified person does not have to be on site.
Okay, I guess I just wonder then, could a person from the restaurant establishment be counted as that certified food service manager who's already in charge of the food? Like, would that be a logical kind of workaround for having to have that person, another person certified, I guess?
We talked about that in the meeting, the previous meeting, and my understanding is the folks from the Gavel were not really super interested in taking that.
That is not what John Cox said. I have asked that question repeatedly and have been told the person had to be on site.
Okay, Jill, my read of the regulations, and again, that's my one time through, is that it was the point of contact of who that food manager is did not have to be on site. So I guess, you know, I don't want to spend the entire evening arguing regulations and stuff like that. You know, I mean, sure, I guess, you know, third option is, you know, do we want to sort of do a half a step back? And John, do you want to, if you could spend some time with Jill to go over the understanding of what's here and what we have to do to, I guess, comply with the regulations. And Jill, just so you know, I mean, the fact that you do have a workaround as the potluck dinner, you know, if that's the way it's going to be, that's the way it's going to be. And I'm gonna let you make that decision whether you want to, you know, withdraw the appeal and just go that route, and then we're done with it essentially, you know, and then you continue with what's going on. I personally would be very hard pressed without a thorough legal interpretation of the regulations as to what's applicable. And I know that the regulations are confusing. I'll be the first to admit that preparation versus serving are used interchangeably, and I don't necessarily agree with the way that some of this stuff is worded, but you know, I didn't write the regulations.
So I just want to clarify, this is verbatim from John Cox 1 minute ago. We have certified people who can be contacted. He has offered that all along. It has never been acceptable before this point. I wouldn't be here if we had been told that previously, because we know there are certified people who are preparing these meals, who deliver them to us, who are accessible to us.
Okay. Fran,
So if you're telling me that John Cox's certified food manager is contactable and is accessible, and that's all we need, then this should have been a non-issue the last time we met.
Jill, I'm going to try and recall. I know John was with you when we had the meeting last or couple months ago, and I remember, and I think we'll have to go back and probably look at the video, what his exact response was, that there just wasn't an interest, or it wasn't a situation he wanted to put his staff in because they weren't there. But then again, you know, if this isn't evolving, and that's the reason we do these, you know, that's why we're discussing this through the appeal. If that's so, becoming
John Cox is on the call right now.
Okay.
He just messaged me, but he's on the call now.
Yeah, I see. I said his voice his name just came up. So yeah, if John wants to kick in, but Fran, hang on a second, we'll get to you in a second. So, John, can you refresh our memories, or can you remember what you said back in the meeting a couple months ago?
He's muted.
John, you're muted.
He sent me a message that says, hold on for 1 second. There's something in his settings he needs to adjust.
Okay.
Andy, maybe you can take Fran Sullivan's question right now.
Sure. Fran, go ahead.
You
got to get him, come off mute.
Hello, Fran Sullivan, 3 Margot Way, Norfolk, and previous member of the board. And I understand that regulations are really tricky, but I think what you're trying to do right now is put this particular community event into a regulation that it really doesn't belong in. And I know Jill alluded to a potluck event, and I'm not sure if you realize that that is actually part of the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 24, Section 328A, potluck events, exemption from regulations by the Department of Public Health or local boards of health. So, Jill, have you read? Are these folks familiar with this regulation? do you know, have you mentioned this before to them?
I have not, but I would be surprised if they weren't aware of it.
Okay, so maybe I should read it. Is that okay? It's pretty short.
Sure, go ahead.
So for the purposes of this section, a potluck event shall mean an event that meets all of the following conditions. People are gathered to share food at the event. There is no compensation provided to people for bringing food to the event. The event is not conducted for commercial purposes, and the participants at the event shall be informed that neither the food nor the facilities have been inspected by the state or local public health department. Notwithstanding any general or special law to the contrary, neither the Department of Public Health nor any local board of health shall regulate the serving of food that is brought to a potluck event sponsored by a group of individuals or by a religious, charitable, or nonprofit organization by individuals attending the potluck event for consumption at the potluck event. Individuals who are not members of the group or organization sponsoring the potluck event may attend the potluck event and consume the food at the event. A business establishment dealing in the sale of food items shall not sponsor a potluck event. So that's kind of a little caveat there, sponsor, but it doesn't say anything about donating. Potluck event food shall not be brought into the kitchen of a business establishment dealing in the sale of food. Okay, so this was enacted in 2014 because of exactly what's happening with the Norfolk Board of Health. I mean, I had for years, when I lived in Medfield, 25 years, individuals would make food and it would be brought to one of the house in Boston. And so all of a sudden the food regulations came out, and suddenly what were all these volunteer organizations going to do about preparing food? Because now they're all considered food establishments, when in fact that was not the spirit of the law. So Governor DeBell Patrick in 2014-15 put together this new potluck event definition. And I just looked up Concord, Mass. And Burlington, Mass. Their boards of health have accepted this as part of their regulations. You can actually find it on their Board of Health sites. So again, I mean, John, help us here, but I think that this is not a food establishment, and there are many organizations in town, in Norfolk and in other towns, that prepare food for events like this, and they're not getting food permit establishments from the boards of health. So I think you're making a lot of work for yourself that you don't need to make. Maybe I'm wrong. Anyway.
Thank you, Fran. I think you're hitting the nail on the head, and where I'm sort of going back and forth on this is that the regulations that John has provided to us and that I've read through say one thing, and what you're telling me clearly supports Jill's position that she has a workaround for this. And at that point, I don't know. I guess there's always going to be the one. Something's going to come up, and I just hope we can anticipate it. And I'm trying to be optimistic, but something will always come up that I can't predict. Hopefully nothing comes up, but this is something that comes up that we may have to address it at that time. And if that does, well, so be it then, I guess.
Yeah.
So.
But we can't regulate people to death here.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. I agree as well. I agree. And John, I guess, listening to what Fran had said, do you have any, I guess, I'm say off the top of your head comments? I mean, obviously, the potluck definition seems to be a little bit more defined than the actual food establishment definition. I'm not sure if that's this is the first time I've heard what Fran said, but having read what you gave us and the regulations associated with that seems to be kind of where I'm thinking right now.
So yeah, I mean, if the community supper wants to meet all the requirements of a potluck, that, you know, they can do that. You know, what I saw was an event that was going on twice a month, feeding 50 people each time. So 100 people a month that they're serving complex food to, that goes through different processes, that there was risk there. And to me, it was clearly a food establishment. To further address the potluck section, I mean, we permit churches, we permit other charitable groups, they pull temporary permits for single events. That's how we started with the community supper, was we issued temporary permits until we could figure out what was going to happen there and what was needed there. So, you know, yeah, the potluck regulations exist. We don't regulate them. There are requirements to meet, as Ms. Sullivan just read to us. You know, so I mean, both options exist, I believe.
Okay. Okay. Liz, any thoughts on this? Or I know you've been listening intently, but any thoughts?
You're speaking to me?
No, Liz.
Me. I obviously was not aware of the potluck rule. I mean, I don't have all the regulations down, but I don't understand what he was saying, that if they want to meet the criteria, is there something that I'm missing that they don't already meet the criteria?
So I don't really know what they do with the people who donate the food. I know the food comes from our conversations, the food comes from a restaurant, you know, with a permit in another town, and I believe a supermarket, maybe a Dunkin' Donuts, something like that. If they're listed as sponsors, that they would have to change that. And then they'd have to inform the public that the food is not coming from permitted or inspected establishments.
No, it just says,
Not being served at,
There's
it's
no-
coming from.
yeah.
Sorry, did I say coming from? Not right. That I don't have it in front of me, but it's something to the effect of that the food is coming from a facility that is not inspected or regulated by the local board of health, something to that effect.
So they can say that it's coming from a restaurant, but they cannot say that where they're receiving it has a permit. Is that what you're saying?
The regulation reads, participants at the event must be informed that neither the food nor the facilities have been inspected by the state or local public health agency for the event to qualify as a potluck event and to be exempt from the regulation DPH or by LBOH.
Okay.
Okay. So Jill,
It seems the most manageable workaround. If this is,
I think
We have
that
no interest in trying to,
I mean, luckily it is from an establishment. I guess the question Cox at the gavel is clearly certified. He counts if we say that they don't have to be at the establishment, or you can go the potluck route and not have to follow really any requirements. Is that what we're saying? Have we confirmed that Cox doesn't have to be there?
I think it's talking about the facility that they're in. So the Grange has not been inspected. And the food that's at the Grange at the time.
Right. What I'm
has
saying
not
is,
been inspected, but it was inspected. I mean, obviously this person, John Cox, has a permit to have a food establishment in 2 food establishments, apparently. So he's licensed he has permits in the state and he follows the regulations, but the food that's actually there, no one's gone in to at the Grange to actually inspect the food when it's sitting in the Grange. That's what the regulation is saying.
Yeah.
so can I just clarify here?
but what I'm saying is either way, if John doesn't have to be there, if John doesn't have to be there, or you're saying it's a potluck, then the requirements are fulfilled either way. Am I not understanding? If the gavel guy, John Cox, is already certified and you said he doesn't have to be at the facility, or you call it a potluck, either way, it's fine, basically.
Essentially, I think that's a good way of putting it. And I think the only thing that I guess as a professional courtesy, what the Board of Health would ask is that, you just send us a sign of, or send us an example of the posting that Ms. Sullivan had identified that needs to be posted, and that's about it, I guess. Not to say it's called a day, but that's and if other things come up, we'll deal with them when they come along. So,
Can I just say something here?
go ahead, Jill.
I have a copy of the regulation on my computer. I'm happy to share it, or I'll just email it to you. Secondly, John Cox says he's here. Thirdly, we have no interest in trying to circumvent anything that John Robertson has taught us, or directed us on how to prepare or how to serve a safe meal. We intend to continue to do everything that we have been doing up to this point, which he inspected on February 16th and had no major issue with. He had a couple of minor suggestions, one about closing of bathroom doors, which we addressed immediately. We don't have any intention of doing anything differently than we have been doing. But to make things easier and not to make the board have to make a tough call, I will withdraw the application for a food establishment permit, and we will proceed as a potluck event. And I'm happy to send you that regulation at the end of this meeting.
Okay, and if I could just add to that, could you send just a copy of the notice that you'll post for the potluck dinner? I think that would
Sure.
just sort of close just because if someone calls up and says, I was here, I'm not going to say that somebody's going to cause trouble, but you just never know, and just to be safe. So
we have signs posted at every meeting that say, food contains nuts, all the rest. We'll make the same signage that I posted every supper. We will have that signage in place for each of our suppers.
Okay. Christy, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just didn't know if it made sense while John Cox was on the line for him to confirm that should somehow the potluck not be an option, that his team would agree to be that food safety manager should we have to revert back to the other option, just since we're all here. Does that make sense?
Christy, I agree with that, but I think if we start talking about this more, I think we're going to find more.
Okay. Sure.
We're going to find more issues in the discussion. So I think
I'm not the one who's going to say the potluck somehow isn't meet the requirement.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's fine.
Let's just keep it simple. So I guess let's see, since we only have 2 members that can vote on this, because Christy, you weren't with the original one. So I guess I'll make a motion, and Liz, if you can second it, to accept the withdrawal of the appeal without prejudice, and that the community supper will provide to the Board of Health a notice of the potluck requirements, postings, language, etc., per the regulations. So that's.
I will second the motion.
Okay.
I don't think I can repeat.
Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. So if there's no further discussion, unless Jill, if you have any last comments, I'm happy. And Fran, thank you for your expertise on this, because this is way beyond my bandwidth.
I'm just going to mention that it appears that there are a couple of our regular attendees who are in this call. I would just welcome them to make a comment if they had something to say.
Okay. So we have Marilyn,
I think, Bork, and Mr. Brenton,
and Maureen M. So if you have if you have any discussions, I mean, I think we're ready to vote on this to accept the withdrawal of the appeal with no prejudice and doing the appropriate signage, and that'll be the final decision, I guess. So, if no further discussion, I'll vote aye to withdraw the appeal. Andy Bakanowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Okay. I think we're good.
Okay. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you, Jill. I appreciate you helping us walk this through. This is, I guess, is just the age of that we live in to a certain degree, but also this clearly shows the regulations that appear to conflict sometimes. And I mean, I deal with them all the time, and sometimes you just can't be quite sure it's going to come around the corner.
So maybe for future consideration by the board will consider adopting the same policy as other communities have, so that other organizations within our community would be aware.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds like a plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your input.
Right.
All right.
Well, John, thank you very much for being here for some moral support. Like I said, I only read the regulations once, and at a certain point after about 5 or 6 pages, you tend to glass over, if you know what I mean. But this is not a simple, or I should say the regulations haven't made this very simple for how local boards of health should be dealing with specific situations such as the community supper. And it's, from my perspective, it's a bit frustrating, but at the same time, it's not surprising. And I think there's patience has to be exhibited on all sides, which I think we kind of accomplished that. So, okay.
Sure. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, John. I know you've got another meeting to get to, so.
Yeah, I'm on 2 meetings at the same time. So if
you
if
are.
there's nothing else, I'll jump off and get into the other meeting as well.
Okay.
If that's all right.
Sure.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks
All
for
right,
hopping
Have a
on.
good night.
You too. All right, we've got meeting minutes and board reorganization.
How about if we do reorganization first?
Sure.
So Chrissy, just so you know, you can come off mute if you want, just so, unless you have a lot of background noise, it's up to you. It's probably easier.
Oh, I'm on Zoom all the time. I mute myself when I'm not talking. Yeah.
Okay. No, at least I don't have my 135-pound beast barking at something, so at least you can still hear me. So typically with reorganization, we have to vote for a chair and for a clerk. I'm currently clerk, and I would like to nominate Liz for clerk for the go around for the next year. And Liz, if you want to accept the nomination, that's fine. If you want to say yes or no, it's up to you. And then we can do a vote first.
I will accept. I'm not sure if I know all the duties of the clerk.
Honestly, it's signing meeting minutes, and then just occasionally dropping in and talking to Betsy about making sure that they're complete, and it's pretty straightforward. I'm usually in the town hall at least every other week, so it's really not an issue. And if I happen to be coming in for other reasons, I'll just send her a text message or call her and let her know I'm coming in. So I can sign it, and then she can get the minutes off to Carol. So that's really about it. So, okay. So I will make a motion to nominate Liz Gephardt.
That's fine. I will accept.
Okay. I'll make a motion to nominate Liz Gephardt for clerk for the Board of Health. And Chrissy, I think you can second that if you want.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, say aye. Andy Bakanowski, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.
Liz, I don't know if you want to abstain. How do we do this before Betsy?
I don't know.
She can vote.
She can vote? Okay.
She can vote. Sure.
Okay. She can be the writing of the blank.
Gephardt, aye.
Okay. Okay. And then for chair, typically it's the person that's going to be up for re-election next, which is me. And I won't nominate myself, but if someone wants to nominate me, unless someone else is what wishes to take this over, that's fine too. I'm not gonna, you know, I got plenty of things to do, but that's okay. I'm good with that. So
I am happy to nominate you
okay,
for the chair.
I accept it. I accept it.
I'm happy
So
to second that nomination.
and I will ask Liz to do the final voice vote, if that's okay. Just to so I'm not calling for my own election, if you want to call it that, or appointment. So
I nominate
so you make the motion.
Andy
You can make the
Bakunowski.
motion, then Christie.
I make a motion to nominate Andy Bakunowski for chair of the Board of Health.
And then Christie would second.
Second.
And no further discussion. So then I guess you can take the vote.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Christy Burns, aye.
Andy Bakunowski, aye. Okay. Liz, did you happen to look at the meeting minutes at all?
I did. I didn't see any concerns in it. I looked at it a day or anything. I can quick peek again. Hold on. I don't see anything.
Yeah, Betsy, I had no comments on the meeting minutes or no corrections. So
Great.
okay. So Liz, do you want to make only Liz and I can vote on this because Christy, you weren't here during that, so that makes sense. Liz, if you want to make the motion to accept the meeting minutes.
Okay. Liz Gephardt, make a motion to accept the meeting minutes from last month.
Second. And all in favor say aye. Andy Bakunowski, aye.
Liz Gephardt, aye.
Okay. We're good. So I'm going to assume that the Board of Health agent updates from John and from Matt, not much is going on.
Right.
I know that they're both busy. I think the one thing Matt and I have actually been somewhat talking, not a lot, but enough offline to talk about the well regulations. And I think for the other board members, I'm not sure if you know or if you've ever looked at the water quality reports for the town. And I'm not trying not to open a hornet's nest here, but I was a little surprised because I actually looked at what's called the consumer confidence reports for 2021 and 2020 and 2021. The 2022 reports will come out this year in June. They're about a year behind. I was surprised that we have PFAS in our groundwater, in our drinking water, that was a big surprise. The standard, the federal standards, the state standards is 20 parts per trillion, and we have a low range of 5 to 7 parts per trillion and a high of 12 to 14 parts per trillion. Where this ties into is that the well regulations that we're looking at for the private wells do include and require PFAS testing as well as required by DEP, but they seem to have dropped a few other test parameters that I was surprised to see, like volatile organic compounds. So this is like gasoline compounds and chlorinated solvents and some of the other things that you can find in household agents that people could be dumping in the yard. So that being said, and I'm thinking ahead on here because some of the work I do is I work for a consulting company part-time that we've installed PFAS systems, very large PFAS systems, and I did ask around to see how much the town has available for if we do find PFAS. What's the plan? And we don't have sufficient funds currently in the water department budget to addressing an emergency action. So we would have to connect to either another town or possibly dilute it. And like I said, I'm trying not to open a can of worms here, but this is PFAS, just so you know, and Chrissy, my background is I'm a geologist by schooling, but I've done remediation, I've done a lot of other things, but PFAS removal is now the big thing of the past couple of years. And when we first started working in the bit, when PFAS was first found, what PFAS is it's that's what I describe it. It's a very slippery fluorine compound, kind of like nonstick pans have it on, and firefighting compounds. If you've seen stuff on the news and stuff like that, it's there. When they first found it, they thought they had 5 or 6 compounds, and now they've broken down to 6 compounds. They call it the PFAS 6. And within that PFAS 6, there's 1,200 compounds. And the EPA just had a notice of rulemaking about a month ago where they're trying to add another 500 or so onto this. And some of this stuff is just, I've never even heard of some of these things. And I just, it just creates a whole different ball of wax. But I guess the question is, what's the game plan for the town if we exceed 20 parts per trillion? I mean, to give you an idea of how big a part per trillion is, if you were to take a football field, an area that's 1/64 of an inch by 1/64 of an inch on that's 1 part per trillion compared on a football field, which is basically the size of a blade of grass. So, I mean, and you need 20 blades of grass essentially to exceed the standard. So that's something.
And what was the increase between 2020 and 2021?
Well, it's actually fluctuated, and it's gone. The highest level was 12 parts per trillion, and then we're up to 14 parts per trillion, with the standard being 20. That's out there. People will say, well, I'll get a filter on my house. It's like, unfortunately, the technology doesn't exist where you can get down to 20 parts per trillion, and this has already been vetted by a lot of I'll call it independent agencies, because the lowest that you can go with a household unit is about 1 part per billion, which is still 100 times greater than the standard, or actually about 80% higher. So,
and there's no natural way, like it's going to increase every year.
Yeah, typically PFAS, the best way to describe it, you find it, it sort of sits there for a bit, it goes up, you get a plateau, it goes up, plateau goes up, and this is just the nature of it, because that's the way this chemical works in the environment. It's not like oils or anything else that will attenuate the soil. It just goes. I mean, it's a new horror compound of the 2020s. 10 years ago it was methyl tertiary butyl ether, which is gasoline component, and they changed it from that chemical in gasoline to ethanol. So it's an interesting issue, and I'm not sure if maybe we should reach out to the Department of Public Works, because I know we have standards if we have an E. coli hit, Betsy, where the Board of Health issues the boil water alerts, and I know we've had that since I've been in town the 30 years, at least once or twice. So what's the plan for PFAS? That's something that has to be done. So I'm kind of throwing that out as this will come up again during a discussion with the well regs, but at the same time, we should probably think about how the Board of Health should work with the DPW and provide education to the town. So.
Do the surrounding towns have the same issue?
Yep.
And do they have a plan that we could look at?
Well, unfortunately, the plans are the best way to describe it, the plans are basically make sure you got a lot of money around. That's what it comes down to. It's
well, we love to spend money here in Norfolk.
Well, the technology. I mean, the technology is it's pretty straightforward. You run it through a carbon vessel, but realize these carbon vessels are $1 to $2 million per each, and given the amount of water that the town uses, we could be looking at 6 to 8 vessels in use at one time. So, and they're just expensive. And I can assure you the COVID shortfalls and supply chains have created longer demands. And I know from keeping contact with some old friends at another job that they're aware of a vessel that was ruptured up in the Worcester foothills. That's a town has a PFAS problem, and they're looking at 16 months before they can get a new vessel in there. So what are the choices? They've they have to reduce water usage, or they have to bring water in from another municipality, and that unfortunately strains their aquifers. So it's just there's really a no-win situation. I do know that the prison wells are clean. I mean, that's an option as well. So that's something that you know, that could be looked at. But again, this is all part of the, you know, what's the plan? And I don't know if there's a plan. I don't think there's a plan in place. So
if it got, like, if you get the 2022 report and it's at 20, our water is then not suitable
it
for
exceeds.
consumption.
This is I feel like we're kind of dealing with the food establishment again. Yes, you have standards.
Sorry, I'm just trying to understand.
No, and it's good. It's good. I'm good you're asking it, because you have a standard of 20, but then again, if you test it again, it comes down to 18. Well, you're back in compliance, but you've hit that threshold. So you really should have been thinking about doing this a couple years ago when they first found the hit, because the engineering time, the construction time, the lead time literally is about 2 years before you can get a plant in place. So no, Christy, that was a great question, and then I apologize for if I was kind of chuckling, but it's, you know, you just have to figure it out. You just have to, you know, get it, you know, you have to get it done. And I think getting a plan in place is the way to go. But this is going to come up when we do the private wells. So, okay. So,
Got it.
okay.
I
So,
just found an online system that tells me it could filter it at my house with a carbon filter.
what does it go down to? 70 parts per trillion?
Well,
Or nano?
it specifies to Massachusetts, so it's saying that it can get, I don't know, it's a very long article. The Blue Drop water filtration system.
If you I didn't look at that one, but there's a couple that were being marketed in Massachusetts, and they only go down to 70 parts per
So they're
trillion.
fibbers.
So yeah, so you're still almost 3 times over the standard. Yeah,
Yeah.
So that's like when you go to Home Depot and you get the little blue vials and they can test for everything. It's like, no, you can't. So anyways, I guess we can continue with the business. I have no updates on Southwood Hospital, and I have no updates on Buckley and Mann. Christy, are you familiar with both those sites
Yes,
at all? Okay.
just from reading old meetings.
Okay. Yeah, Southwood is 2 years away before anything gets done out there, and Buckley and Mann kind of was ready to go, and then the developer pulled out, and then the new developer is, let's just say they're managing their remediation costs with their development scheme. So but before we get to the next meeting, I don't know if you want to, you know, get a formal dump on what I do professionally and what Liz does professionally, just so you kind of know who you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And Liz, I'll let you go first if that's okay. If you can.
Sure, I'm a part-time family practitioner. I work in Plainville. I've been working for about 15 years. Prior to that, I was an occupational therapist. So I'm more in tune with COVID than Wells.
So,
Dummy doing.
okay. Liz, how long have you lived in town?
Me?
Yeah. How long
I've
have you lived
been here about 15 years.
Okay. So yeah, so she's seen a lot of changes too. So, so I've been in town just over 30 years. Bought the house, raised the kids. They're out of the house and working. One's in Dana-Farber, one's at BU. So they did well. Like I said, I'm a geologist by schooling. Started off looking for water. Building water systems, transitioned into remediation of groundwater. Kind of, got involved with remediation of construction sites, which eventually led me to work for corrections for almost 22 years and was doing facility stuff. I got my water licenses to run well systems, so I know that stuff. I was a licensed site professional up until 2019 when the retirement tunnel was opening up and decided I wasn't going to be doing that stuff anymore, but I still keep involved and up to date on what's going on there. And as I joke with people now, pretty much just fly a drone. So that's how I guess you get into retirement. But I've been enlisted. If you saw some few recent pictures, I'm taking pictures for the fire department construction project to document what's going on there. So that's in a nutshell. Betsy, I'd say if you want me to see if I can wrestle the 50-pound beast, I'll show her to you on the camera.
Yeah, for sure. My cat's behind me. He's
Hang on
sleeping.
Let me go find her. She's sleeping in the front hallway.
Okay.
You
Betsy, oh, sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just was gonna maybe try to set up a time to come in to sort of like understand like the health agents and what their jobs are, you know, if are they both employees of Norfolk, or I mean, I can come in to go over all of that. We don't have to
Yeah,
chat about
so
it
I can actually tell you. So our two health agents, Matt Tanis, he's our environmental health agent. He is actually they're both employees of Rentham, actually. We entered into a grant with Rentham and Franklin, Public Health Excellence Grant. Oh, the baby.
Mm-hmm. The 50-pound, 4-month baby.
Hi, sweet girl. Lainey. Oh my God.
So is it Bernie's Mountain Dog?
Yeah, we have another one. So.
Oh, nice.
Oh my God. How old is she, Andy?
She's 4 months and a week now. At 50 pounds, she's a big girl. Come on.
Oh my God. What a big, what a fluff ball, huh?
I disturbed her sleep. Sorry.
Oh, I know. She's like, you woke me up for this.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, we were able to enter into a public health excellence grant during COVID with Rentham and Franklin. So we were able to hire Matt Tanis and John Robertson. So Matt does all of our environmental, stuff for us. Prior to that, we had private contractors. So this is our first time we've actually had staff. John does restaurants and any housing code inspections. So we have John 8 hours a week. So we share him with Rentham and Franklin. Matt covers just Rentham and Norfolk.
Okay. Thanks. I was just kind of confused on like who did what.
Yeah, take a look at our website too. So it's part of the Metacomet Public Health Alliance. So that's the grant. And we also have nurses on staff as well, which we've never had before. It's the town of Rentham nurses. Now we're part of the Metacomet Public Health Alliance. So our nurse Janine is she does office hours on Wednesdays at the senior center, which is actually housed at the town hall right now because of the water damage. So she's there one full day and she does appointments. So they're fantastic. We're so lucky to have them.
Appointments for what? Like just a resident can go see the nurse or anything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Blood pressure checks, anything. So, but take a look at our webpage too. There's also a link to the Metacomet Public Health Alliance website, and that kind of explains like everything that you probably need to know is on there.
Okay, great, thanks. You can hear now my cat knew we were talking about animals and now he has jumped down and is meowing.
So funny. You probably saw my cat make an appearance before.
So, Chrissy, I don't know if you had the chance to look at any of the zoning laws or bylaws in town, but there's, like I say, probably about 5 to 10% of them that are probably applicable to the work this board does.
Okay.
Some of it's the setbacks for septic systems, and it's worth looking at. If you go to the state of Massachusetts and type in Title V, be prepared and make sure you have something to poke yourself a few times, because you're going to fall asleep reading them. They're dreadfully boring regulations, and that's what Matt basically does that for us. I mean, there's a few things that we can ask during when he's making his presentation, but for the most part, Title V systems are pretty straightforward now. It's some of these more complex ones that come in with new technology that will probably need a little bit more, and we do have the opportunity to bring in another consultant if necessary or as needed. So
does the Board of Health have to, like, I just got a new septic system installed.
Yep.
Does the Board of Health have to like approve every single one of those that goes through town?
No, most of them everything is done in office. The plan reviews. Matt does all the inspections. I do all the admin work. The only time the Board of Health members actually see the septic system design plans is when someone's requesting a variance. Could be setback, a setback to a property line or a foundation, or distance to groundwater, or another popular one that we see is if they request a variance to use a sieve analysis if they can't do a percolation test. So those are probably the main ones, but those are the only times you will probably see anything related to septic systems.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. There's that one case where the house, they wanted to increase the number of bathrooms.
Bedrooms.
I'm sorry, bedrooms. Increase the number of bedrooms, and they had increased the size of the holding tank, but the leach field was the same. Was adequate. So yeah, that one was kind of interesting from the perspective of, okay, well, how do you really do that? You think about that at times, but it just is one of those things where it actually came forward. So it's worth a good that goes back in the storage banks, and you're good for the next time it comes up. So.
Okay, yeah, I'll read that.
Okay.
Right. So now that we have staff, the workload for the Board of Health members has decreased. Well, especially since we're really not dealing with COVID anymore. That was a big topic of conversation for many months, right, Liz?
Definitely.
Okay.
So, and just the way the office is structured, I don't think you've been in yet, but I am the executive assistant for the land use department, which consists of the Board of Health, Planning Board, Zoning Board, and Conservation Commission. Town planner is Rich McCarthy. He's the department head. So you have to come in and visit sometime.
Hey, I've been working too much lately.
Right. If you have any questions, please reach out.
Okay.
Okay. Well, since I have definitely not kept the meeting under an hour, like my predecessor.
You can blame me.
Who used no. I mean, that's fine. That's fine. And Christy, if you got a Gmail account yet, or your email?
Not yet. I've got to get that set up for her through IT.
Okay. Yeah, something comes up, feel free, just for questions and stuff like that. But obviously, to maintain, the open meeting law stuff, just send everything to Betsy. If there's a question, and she can either field, send that off to, or include it in the next meeting agenda. So that's one of the things we want to avoid dealing with if we can.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually, Rich and I were just talking today about setting up some open meeting law trainings for the board members too. So I'll let you know when we do that. We were thinking about maybe just doing a training even like some night before the meeting, So, but we'll be working on that, probably do that probably September.
And Betsy, do you schedule the conflict of interest meeting law? I mean, meeting law quiz review, whatever that.
No,
portion-
that's Carol.
It's Carol.
Carol Green does that.
Okay.
Yeah, she sent it to me. I have 5 more days to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty dry.
I've just been traveling like 2 weeks out of the last
Yeah.
4, so I'll do it.
It's honestly, if you put the speed onto 1.25, you can blast through in about 45 minutes. Like, yeah. Otherwise, it's going to be like an hour and a half. So it's it's really dry.
I usually fast. And the question, even if you get a question wrong on it, I think you just go back until you get the question right.
Okay.
Unless you get multiple choice. I had multiple choice questions this year though, so you had to.
You did?
Yeah. But anyways. Okay. I guess, can I get a motion to adjourn if there's no further discussion on anything or anything else on anybody's mind?
No, I've got Christy, we typically meet the 4th Tuesday of the month, but we're, sometimes we're flexible. So if someone, I know Liz has something on August 22nd, so we'll talk about rescheduling that meeting. So
Are they always Zoom?
well, we've been doing Zoom. We can, we had, because our good friend Andy was a little bit laid up too. So if you ever want to meet in person, we have the capability of doing a hybrid meeting as well.
Okay, just for schedule. Even if I'm traveling, I probably can make a meeting.
Great. Yeah,
Zoom, so.
Zoom seems to be working pretty well for everybody. So we're just carrying on unless someone really has their heart set on meeting in person.
Yeah, I mean, it's convenient too. It's just very convenient as well. So,
Sure.
Yeah. So, Chrissy, I couldn't drive for 3 months because I blew out my knee, so that's why.
Oh no.
So,
Well,
but
glad you're back up and running.
I still have a way to go. Believe me, I still have a way to go. So, but at least I can drive and can get myself around.
Right. Well, it was nice to see you back, Andy.
Okay, thanks.
Right.
Okay. We all set, Betsy?
We're ready. I'm good. Yeah. If someone wants to make a motion to adjourn, we can certainly adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second. All in favor, say aye. Andy Bakanowski, aye.
Christy
Liz
Burns, aye.
Gephardt, aye.
Okay. Okay. Good night. Thank you, guys.
Thanks.
All right.
Nice to
Good
meet
night,
you.
everyone. All right.
Bye.
Nice to meet you, Christy.
Good night.